And I don't believe E. Jean Carroll. Maybe if she came out 15 years ago, maybe I'd believe her. But coming out right before an election, I can't buy it, my friend.
You voted for Kamala, right?
Kamala. Yes.
Kamala. Sorry, dude. I mean, that shit is crazy.
What? What's crazy?
You did vote for her, though? Just like the pronunciation of her name. It's hard. Kamala.
Yeah, go
right?
for it.
You know, she also hung around someone who was held liable for and she slept with and was openly messing around with someone who was held liable for a bunch more. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Allegations.
Who?
Diddy?
Did you vote for Donald Trump?
I did 3 times.
Why so?
Why so?
Yeah.
Well, so I guess I don't want to like go too long. Each time I voted had a different reason. This specific time, I felt we needed a focus on foreign policy and the southern border the most. He did run on that in 2016, but the 4 years with Biden in office, I felt like the border was a mess. They were trying to cover it up, say there wasn't an issue, and then of course everything going on overseas. And I just thought Donald Trump was the better pick.
Okay, so immigration. So can you tell me one Trump immigration policy you agree with?
Yeah, mass deportations.
Mass deportation? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So why is mass deportation preferable to mass amnesty?
Because a lot of people in this country who are being deported are criminals, and we see that for the people going to El Salvador. I see that in my own state. I don't even live in a border state, and we have ICE here. I don't know if you've seen Massachusetts in the news lately, but we've had ICE go in Worcester, Somerville, Boston, and they're picking up, disgusting individuals who've committed crime, like awful crimes. And that's not saying, citizens don't commit those crimes,
Can I ask you
but that doesn't mean we should allow these people to live here. Yeah.
Yeah, so like violent criminals, we should deport them. I totally agree. If they were held civilly liable, women, we don't want them in the country, right?
No, civil is not criminal. No. If you want to go down the E. Jean Carroll path, go
wait to clarify. You're telling me if someone is trying to immigrate to the country and they were held civilly liable of a woman, you'd let them immigrate to the country?
Well, no, because you don't have
why
a
not?
right. Because you don't have a right.
You don't have a right? What do you mean?
You don't, meaning you do not have a right to go into a country and get citizenship. You have to go through a process. The only subject you have for a right is to seek asylum, and even then, you can ask Abrego Garcia. He sought asylum, and his claim was denied. In fact, he had a stay order. The only reason this is a whole thing is because they sent him to the country he was told not to go to, but he had a withstanding deportation order. He sought asylum. But to answer your question, you do not have a right to come to this country. You have the honor, the privilege, and the right to try, but you do not have a right to be here. So yes, you can go off moral and character.
Okay,
Absolutely.
do you want me to re-ask the question again because you didn't answer it?
No, I did.
I'll re-ask the question one more
said
time.
if somebody
Can I
was
re-ask the
civilly
question?
liable for, you said if somebody was civilly liable for SA, would they be able to come in the country?
No. I asked you, would you let them legally immigrate into the country if they were going through the process?
No.
And they were at the very end of the process, and you were the one to determine whether or not you'd let them in the country. You would say no. Okay, so then why do you have harsher qualifications on who's allowed to legally immigrate to the country comparative to who's allowed to be president of the United States?
Sure. So the difference is there's a bigger spotlight on the president. We all watch the case, or I assume a lot of people know the facts of the case. They watch E. Jean Carroll. They listen to E. Jean Carroll. I don't listen to the hundreds of thousands of people who are seeking asylum. I don't know their case. I don't even know if they were tried in a free, fair court. What we do know is Donald Trump had his time. Donald Trump said what he had to say. And Parker, 77 million people voted for Donald Trump despite him being held civilly liable. So you do have to ask yourself, why did 77 million people vote? And it's because they clearly didn't find that the case was enough to bar somebody from being president. It's simple.
Yeah, you thinking that the case isn't enough to bar someone from being president isn't a response to the question I asked you for why you put harsher.
It is.
I asked you a very simple question. Why do you put harsher qualifications on who's allowed to legally immigrate to the country comparative to who's allowed to be president? Because very clearly, we typically are going to place higher qualifications on who's going to be allowed to be president of the United States comparative to who's allowed to be a citizen of the United States.
Well, you actually don't. The Constitution outlines.
Can I please finish?
Go ahead. My bad.
Yeah, so Joe Biden, you don't think he's qualified to be president, correct? But he's qualified to be
for president.
a
Yes,
citizen. right? So people who are legally immigrating to the country, right? You don't think every single person who is legally immigrated to the country is qualified to be president of the United States. So clearly, there are going to be harsher qualifications on who's allowed to be a president comparative to who's allowed to just be a citizen.
Sure, but I already explained to you that the difference is the people that are coming into this country, we don't understand what their case would be. We don't know their full story like we do with Donald Trump.
You said you don't know the full story. So you're saying if you don't know any facts of the case, right, civil liability is enough to accept it. But given that you do know enough facts about the case, you have good reason to dispute it. So tell me the facts that you dispute about the case.
About Eugene Carroll?
Yeah.
Well, the main fact was, I mean, the way that she was recalling it, she wasn't aware of specific dates. Everything was a recollection from 30 years prior and in scribbles in a journal that she kept. They had a dress to which they had no DNA. Donald Trump didn't provide DNA. They had no DNA evidence to suggest that. And all of it was not hearsay because it was coming from the victim, but it was just personal account. And it was held in a Manhattan courtroom, which votes 90% for not Trump. They voted 10% for Trump. So clearly there's dissent in Manhattan anyways for this individual. So no, I don't think the trial was in a fair setting. And I just didn't believe what she had to say. And Parker, at the end of the day, if we're going to listen to a case to which there is no hard evidence and it's he said, she said, I'm going to listen to both sides of the story and I'm going to decide who I believe. And I don't believe Eugene Carroll. Maybe if she came out 15 years ago, maybe I'd believe her. But coming out right before an election, I can't buy it, my friend.
So most civil liability cases, the ones that you accepted, don't meet the same standard of evidence that Eugene Carroll's case hit, because she had 9 jurors that unanimously determined that Donald Trump sexually abused her, which again, you say that it's a 90% liberal area, right? Even if we were to assume that those were the characteristics when being applicable to the jury, there were still at least 1 or 2 jury members that specifically would have been either independent or conservative, that specifically would have not been quote unquote biased in the case. Right. Plus, we can also look at the fact that Donald Trump's lawyers were part of the jury selection process. So it's even less likely that you would have seen such bias insofar as that it would have limited the case from having an accurate determination. Secondly, you said, quote unquote, no hard evidence. Again, what I just said, again, more evidence with this case than most civil cases. So if you accept most civil cases based on not knowing what's within the context of the case, well, then obviously if this has a higher standard in terms of the level of evidence that was provided in the case because of the level of jurors that selected that it was when they didn't have to have a unanimous decision, right, is evidence of that. You also said the dress no DNA because Donald Trump didn't provide the DNA. Why didn't he provide the DNA?
Because he doesn't have to. Why would if anybody with a legal counsel would tell you if you're in a civil court that you're not gonna play to their antics? You don't know what happens to DNA over 30 years. You don't know if maybe he was with her. Maybe he actually never did anything to her. Maybe he met her in the store. Maybe they had a conversation. Maybe there's DNA on the dress. I mean, there's so many different paths that could go down.
This is a total misnomer, because what you're
not
acknowledging is that Donald Trump's story was that he never met her. It's not that he didn't know if he met her or not, and that maybe it is the case that he did meet her. It's the case that he never met her and that he wouldn't have her because she's quote unquote not his type. But then in a deposition, he mistook her with his ex-wife, indicating both his ex-wife and Eugene Carroll are either both not his type, insofar as he would have her either way, or they both are his type, so he would have her either way.
Sure, I'm speaking on the more hypothetical of why he wouldn't have provided DNA.
Yeah, but I want to ask you, if you were in the same civil case scenario and it was the case that you were going to be held liable for her, if it wasn't the case that you provided the DNA, right? Given that you never met her, right? Would you provide the DNA?
Probably not. No.
That's a ridiculous statement, because what you would have done is exonerated yourself, because if you never met her, you would exonerate yourself because they don't have the DNA, and it would prove that you weren't at the scene of the crime.
Well, no, there's the unknown with DNA in terms of you have a 30-year-old dress. You don't know if they planted DNA. You don't know what can happen in those situations.
They planted Trump's DNA.
I didn't know.
How did they get Trump's DNA?
What Parker, what we can say
How
is
did they get Trump's DNA?
Parker, there is evidence of not only NYPD, but virtually every large metropolitan police department that has been caught either planting evidence on maybe not big celebrities, but people of color. There's people.
Yeah. Not
There's
white,
people who are
straight.
planted evidence.
Yeah.
People
On
get planted
on marginalized communities, not on white, straight, cis, heterosexual men in America. Like, you're not talking about the rich men
Tell
in
that to
America.
Karen Reed. Tell that to Karen Reed, who's
I
in
don't even know who
trial
that
right
is.
now. Well, she's in trial in Massachusetts, and she's being.
I'm talking about white, straight, cis, heterosexual men.
Okay, so okay. I mean, sure. I mean that's your opinion.
Or
Again,
rich.
You let me know when you're ready for the Budapest Memorandum.
oh, what the fact that
So
Barack
can I
Obama didn't
please-
use it in 2012 or
Can I-
2014?
Yeah,
Talk about
it. You know that that was overnight. Given that they could have, right? They would have, and it was the case that they definitely were against Russia doing that. That's also why there was a response from Biden, specifically in the context of the scenario when they did invade the rest of Ukraine. And
So
Donald Trump, there would have been less
support
stuff.
Barack
Secondly,
Obama
why are
letting
you
Crimea
pivoting
go.
from originally what we were talking about?
Well, Michael was just talking about the Budapest.
Wait, what were we
Memorandum.
just talking about?
We were talking about E. Jean Carroll and the fact that I don't believe her.
And the fact that you don't accept the case, yet it is the case that it has
No,
better
77
evidence.
million people didn't. So how? What do you?
77 million people not accepting the case doesn't actually change anything. Actually, I asked the question specifically to people at Jubilee: would you vote for someone held civilly liable for a woman? And most people said that they wouldn't vote for someone who did that. So, given that more people knew that Donald Trump was held civilly liable for a woman, and he actually was held liable by a unanimous decision from a jury, more people would have not voted for him.
Yeah,
But because people didn't understand that fact of reality, because it wasn't as talked about, because of those types of facts, right? And because it was dismissed, right? That is the reason why people didn't even hear about it very much.
Okay.
And so far as
we're
they would have
gonna
been able
pretend
to
like
take
nobody
it into
knew
their
about E. Jean
analysis.
Carroll. Okay.
Wait, I think a lot of people didn't. Yeah, I was talking to people.
Maybe your side didn't. Maybe your side didn't.
That's not
I
true.
don't know.
You're
What do
just
you mean?
lying.
You guys
You're just
lost. You guys
Tesler,
lost 6 million votes over Biden.
I talk to people every single day, right, about this topic, and I was debating MAGA all the time who didn't know that Donald Trump was held civilly liable at the moment. Did you vote for Donald Trump?
Yeah, bro.
Why so?
He just puts America first. You know what I mean?
Can you name a policy he passed that put America first?
America first. Why didn't you vote for Trump?
Because he was held civilly liable for a woman. He bragged about walking into the changing rooms of girls in Miss Teen USA because he quote unquote owns the place to inspect them without their consent. He said he would date a 10-year-old girl in 10 years. The tax policy he advocates for will negatively disenfranchise low and middle income individuals by disenfranchising them by increasing their taxes disproportionately comparative to people.
But you voted for Kamala, right?
Kamala. Yes.
Kamala. Sorry, dude. I mean, that shit is crazy.
What's crazy?
You did vote for her, though? Just like the pronunciation of her name. It's hard
No, it's
to
not.
remember.
But you could just say Harris.
Kamala.
Yeah, go
Right.
for it.
Trying to be respectful here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was asking if you voted for her, and you said yes, but she also hung around someone who was held liable for and she slept with and was openly messing around with someone who was held liable for a bunch more. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Allegations.
Who?
Diddy?
One, those images are not real. She never was hanging out with Diddy. Two, Donald Trump was literally friends with Diddy. And Donald Trump was good friends with Epstein too. And he said that Epstein likes beautiful women as much as he does, many of them on the younger side.
And my thing is, seemingly every time anyone brings up anything about Donald Trump to hate on him, it's not political. It's like, I'm voting for the president of the United States. I'm not voting for someone because they're out here having sex with whoever.
Then if you want to reference policy, can you name me 2 Trump policies that you like?
I already did.
Go ahead.
I already did, though.
No, just tell me.
Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
That's
in
one.
America First.
That's not a policy. What's the second policy? You got to look it up.
America First.
That's not a policy.
How's it not? What do you mean it's not a policy? What do you like in terms of policies? What exactly are you referencing? Like policies he put in place or policies that got passed?
Policies he put in place.
Tax Cuts and Jobs Act for sure.
That's one. You've already said that one.
And then when the fucking what's it called? When he was getting all the companies to drill.
When he was getting all of the countries to drill.
Companies.
That's not a policy. So you don't know two policies of Donald Trump's, and yet you're like, dude, people only bring up character, they never bring up policy. Well, bro, you don't even know the policy, so maybe that's why.
Well, maybe because I don't look at what he's trying to do, and I look at what he's done and what he does do.
That's why
You
I
guys
asked you
always
for,
bring
okay,
up policies.
You look at what he does
guys
do.
always
Okay,
bring
so
up
what
policies, but
policies did he
nothing-
do? What policies did he do that you like? You can't mention more than one.
I can name
You have
things
to
he
you have to
did,
look it up right now. I can.
and I can name things that the Democrats did
Okay,
that
go
I
ahead.
didn't like.
Go ahead. Tell me.
Well, for one, they were helping every other country but our own, sending billions of dollars to other countries, leaving military-grade equipment in other countries.
Sky, the Republicans are voting for the policies that will lead to foreign aid, and they aren't voting for the policies here at home domestically. Democrats are voting for the policies here at home domestically. Just because we have spending on countries around the world doesn't mean that we don't have spending here. We put significantly more into people here at home than we spend on countries around the world. That's a very small portion of not only the military budget that we sent to Ukraine, but of our overall budget. It's even smaller.
Right, but when you're giving billions of tax-paying dollars to other countries, it doesn't really speak volumes about your care for the American citizens.
Say that one more time.
I said, when you're giving billions to other countries who do nothing for us, it doesn't really speak volumes about your care for American citizens who vote for you and rely on you.
Okay, Republicans voted for that.
How do you figure?
It's bipartisan. The foreign assistance was bipartisan.